Welcome back to the studio here at EVIC TV, the European Pain Conference, September of 2023 here in Budapest. We have done, I think, about 12 interviews by now with people who are experts in different things, but they all talk about pain. But what we really haven't had, and as a matter of fact, this is the whole history of EVIC TV since 2019. We've never had a real expert on what it feels like to live with pain. So it's my great honor to have you here, Deirdre. But before we talk about why you're here, could you tell us a little bit about who you are?
Okay, so first of all, I'm a pain patient, as you allude to, but also I'm president of Pain Alliance Europe. And so my whole journey with pain started way back in 2008 as a patient, not knowing anything about pain, and have had a meandering journey along the way to now be at the largest congress in pain. So many different experiences along the way. And really what I saw was such a delay in diagnosis, finding it so hard to find accurate information, then tackling all the society, well, really even just the family that was around me and the visibility of pain, their understanding of pain. Trying to negotiate my way through all of that led me here, and to really hopefully change and improve that for people that are recently diagnosed and going through the same journey now.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to the Patient Alliance Europe and the work you do, which is extremely important, of course. If it's right, I would like to ask you just a little bit more about your trajectory, because I think that's also giving us a perspective of where we are not, we as professionals are maybe not doing what we would think we are doing, perhaps. So you have this, you mentioned delayed diagnosis. Mm-hmm. What were your experiences? Did you meet, so other than people perhaps being nice, did you have a good path or journey through the system, or what was your journey?
Well, it was a bit of everything. And my GP, thankfully, I had a really good relationship with my GP, especially by the end of everything. We got to know each other very well. But he had a genuine interest in research himself anyway, and was very well informed as a GP. And I was incredibly lucky that he was my general practitioner at the very beginning. So he was eager that I would see the right person, and hopefully quickly. Unfortunately, as was out of his control and mine, waiting lists, how I presume clinically how I presented, whether I was really an emergency or not, meant I was waiting a really long time to see a pain specialist, for example, for the first time. And for me, from pain starting, which was really gradual, it wasn't anything traumatic. I mean, in terms of diagnosis of its fibromyalgia, but also seronegative rheumatoid arthritis, which really took a long time to figure out. And so it was gradual. I had nothing traumatic, nothing dramatic to be able to say this specifically happened, and I think that obviously added to the delay. And then trying to find the specialist that could investigate, but also that I could feel understood by also. And that was trial and error. And there was a lot of dismissal, and because it was taking so long, all of the other factors, so my mood, how I behaved even in my appointments, really impacted on the care that I was getting, and I was dismissed in many times that it was all in my head, that really it was only that I was stressed out, or if I just tried antidepressants everything would be okay. And of course there was a lot of that going on, especially now I can look back and see that, but at the time I didn't understand that. I felt just dismissed, that they didn't understand. They don't see the pain, they just think I'm a crazy woman, and I should just, snap out of it.
And when I sit here and look at you, you are coherent, you are you owe of resources, and you have all of that. Do you think you need that to be a patient in the current system? So do you need resources, or are you feeling that we as a system are taking good enough care of patients? Again, this is coming into maybe the political side of your work.
Definitely. I mean, there's been huge change in many areas in a lot of that, both from the patient's understanding, but also patients being more activated for various reasons, social media being one of them, for example. That thirst for knowledge, partially due to the lack of resources, they're looking for that information now. I think people are more activated in that way to try and seek out better care. I think that is a big change. And what they're being greeted with in terms of services being offered, obviously the research behind all of that, that has moved along a lot also. So they really in advocacy terms, we feel like everything takes forever to change. But I know since I was diagnosed and that journey, I can't say it's better for everybody, but I know in a lot of cases it has changed.
That's
and
nice.
Continues to change.
Good to hear.
Yeah, and improve, not just change, improve.
And
yeah.
and then if we shift gears and talk about the Pain Alliance Europe, what is that? How would you describe it, and who are you representing?
Well, we're an umbrella organisation, so not really directly in contact with the patients, which is always a little bit different and is always a reluctance of mine. But as an umbrella organisation, we represent 40 different national and regional associations that on a day-to-day level deal with patients at the national and regional level, regardless of the underlying cause of pain, in 17 different countries.
Yeah, so for instance in Denmark, where I'm from, there would be an organisation, in this case they're called FACS.
Yes.
And they reach out, they contact patients, they do a lot of things nationally.
Indeed.
And then your umbrella organisation, or the umbrella organisation you're the president of, what exactly do you do?
Okay, so it's trying to find that link between what's happening at home and then what's happening in Europe. So there's 3 ways that we do that really, and EFIC is really instrumental in that, in the work that we do. For example, one of our pillars is the societal impact of pain, where we really try to bring healthcare practitioners, clinicians, researchers together with the patients in a platform to lobby and influence policy change at the European level, so that then each individual member state can take those examples, take the powers that be in Europe, their guidance on what policy can be, and try and implement that at the national level too. So that's only one way, but that's more the political, but also in terms of research as well. I don't want to be the president of a pain organisation sharing only my experience. It's so important that we capture the voice of pain patients in Europe, and we do that through our surveys that are in the patient language. We usually translate them into every language of the membership that we have. And it's not really for academic publication, but our stigma survey in 2019, for example, had over 6,000 respondents. So I can then stand up in front of everybody and say, this is what's happening for pain patients. Not my experience, but this is what people are telling us. So that's so important, as well as partnering in the ERANET Neuron, for example, in the training, in the smaller EU-funded projects, as well as Horizon, for example, partnering those applications too, but also trying to bridge the gap between the two at the national level too. So if you have a multi-country, multi-university, multi-site project, have we got patients in those areas that we can match with the project, as well as ourselves as sort of helping in that?
Yeah, because by the end of the day, I mean, for many clinicians, and particularly maybe for researchers, there's this long tradition of looking at means or groups, and a single individual has traditionally had a hard time raising a voice, unless that person was speaking on the behalf of many people.
Yeah.
So how long has the Pain Alliance Europe been doing that? How long have you been doing like surveys and really raising the voice of those that we essentially want to help?
Well, Pain Alliance Europe was founded in 2011, and the first membership-wide, because obviously it takes time to build up a membership of such scale, and it's still growing. This, especially after COVID, a lot of organisations have had to close their doors. Some members aren't as engaged or active as they used to be. We're always looking for reaching every country, especially to reflect different socio-demographics, for example. So we're always looking for new members. I'll put that out now. First of all, we don't know everybody, but we want to. It took time until 2017 for the first survey before there was enough people that we thought would respond. I wasn't there then.
So who could sit out there that would be, by coincidence, listening to this interview and thinking, I'm exactly who Deirdre is looking for? Who is that? Who isn't part of your organisation that you would want to reach out to? Is it specific countries or is it specific groups of people? Or?
Well, because the mechanism at the moment is for patient organisations, so they need to have some kind, even if it's a Facebook group. we can start from there and help them grow into a formal organisation, but really we want, I genuinely mean every pain patient that's out there, but that also means not everybody is suited towards a patient group, we acknowledge that, but that's really how we mainly engage at the moment. We can always accept the outliers also. There's plenty of patient advocates not associated with other groups that are doing great work too, but it is the groups that we're looking for at the minute. Yeah. And there are some countries that we're really missing. Say Poland we'd like to be more active in, Serbia for example, and we hear the speakers here. We know that the clinicians are active in those areas, and we'd really love to hear from the patient's perspective of the work they're doing there as well. And that's only two of many countries where we really need to expand.
I guess just on a very, very small scale, I was trying to listen to your story or have you tell your story before, because the stories that we have drive what we think is important as well, of course. And many clinicians and researchers are not pain patients themselves.
Yeah.
So we don't have that lived experience and we don't see the obstacles. I think we tend to see what goes well. Could there be a bias in the people who are within your group as well, so that these are the resourceful people who actually manage both a life with pain but also helping others? Could there be a bias in that? Are there people
Absolutely.
You're not representing essentially?
Absolutely. You need to be quite active and advocating for yourself even to join a patient group. And then within patient organisations, who is it that's actually speaking? That's why our surveys are so important to us, that it isn't me speaking my own agenda as an individual, it's all of those voices. But is that what's happening at the national level in some of the smaller organisations? That isn't always the case. And being part of organisations, we all know there's always politics and people's agendas and everything. And does that really reflect a person's individual experience? Not always. But without both, we don't really activate change. If we all stayed as individuals and tried to share our experience, it wouldn't really go anywhere. And it's really been the activities of patient groups that has forwarded this agenda, especially within Europe, to reach the level that we're at now.
And how do you feel that people outside of the patient groups receive you? Are they embracing the fact that you are together and you speak, on behalf of many people, or are they seeing it as a bit weird, or do they have preferences in different directions, or how is people perceiving you?
It's a mixture, so it depends on how we're approaching them as well. If we're looking for money, it's always one one approach, but especially for research, when we can show that we understand what we're approaching, and ultimately it's not adversarial. We're not there to make a point of we want to show how bad everything is. That isn't how we approach things, which historically has been an approach for lots of patients. But it's really how are we going to work on this together to make a difference? And can we genuinely build a relationship? Because I think that's really key. If you can facilitate an openness from patients that isn't critical on either side around, this was my genuine experience, what are you going to do with that now? Great, maybe you have a paper or something like that, but will that change anything for the next person who goes to see the same doctor or is in the same service or the same country even?
Yeah.
So what are you going to do about it? Great, I'm happy to answer your survey, but what are you going to do? And I think helping everybody understand that has been a challenge.
Yeah. So we had a chat a while back about whether or not an organisation like yours could see a value in changing or supporting better education for healthcare professionals. So I'd be happy to raise my voice and say I think healthcare professionals should be better educated. But do you think that if we were educated differently or better, that would essentially make a difference for the people you represent? Or is that just something we think because we see, we see what we can do something about and maybe not what we need to do? I
think it's quite a broad topic. I mean, to to put into simplistic terms, yes, everybody could be better educated, but I think it's not a question of whether we should educate or re-educate, it's how it's done and when. So if I'm a GP, or at what stage should the training happen also, and by whom? Are patients part of these modules? Having the lived experience at this Congress even, you can see it in the room, because not everybody actually deals with the patients. So that should be in all areas of education, not just the people who will actually sit in front of them, from basic research as well. They need to know where their research is going and who it'll benefit.
Yeah, I used to pride myself of following many things pain, so I have an interest in from basic research to societal impact and returning to work, all of that. And yet I was quite surprised yesterday. I had an interview with Shikhar Sanda and Kirsty Bannister about basic research, and I was quite surprised when they told me that they have patient engagement. So whenever they're doing basic research, the way it's traditionally done is that we have an animal, and then you do something to the animal which we think mimics what happens in people.
Indeed.
And then you treat the animal to see if that's a way forward for people as well. But they do it oppositely now. They ask patients with pain, like for instance fibromyalgia, and say, this thing, fibrofog, what does it make you do? And then they go back to laboratories and see if they can make an animal model of that, because there are things we can do ethically to animals that we can't do to humans, or shouldn't do. So they use the models to help patients, but with the patient as a role model, not the tissue in the rodent, for instance. I think that's beautiful.
That's an excellent example. I mean, it makes my case exactly. And for public and patient involvement in research, the earlier the better, but in all kinds of research, as you say, it's from the outside it can be difficult to see the link between patients and basic science, but even in what's been investigated and the need in the first place, apart from, of course, it all contributes to the wider knowledge that's out there, but really when patients are engaged with that and can guide it, it really enriches the whole experience. And when you speak to any researchers in any field that are engaging with patients, they go, I don't know why we didn't do this before.
Yeah, I have done a bit of work with where patients or patient organisations have been involved, and I'm sometimes asked by colleagues, how should we start this? And let me just say what I would say, and then you can criticise it afterwards. My perspective nowadays, and I admit that has changed over the time, but this is what I think is the best way to do it today, is to obviously to respect the person as an expert, and then say, we don't know. That's why you're here. Would that be fair, or is that putting too much pressure on the person with the lived experience for them to actually know what is important to bring to the table?
It's difficult because everybody has their area of interest. Obviously, you know, if it's basic, you're not going to be doing quantitative methods and all of that. But I think timing really is so important. How early you involve the patients is really critical to how you approach them. Because if you're approaching me at the end of your research project,
this is what we did, what do you think?
We did this, you know, we'd love to hear what patients think about it to involve you.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this wasn't really important to us in the beginning, if we're honest. We maybe don't even understand especially in basic science, it can be very technical. These things aren't translated for patients also. You know, there isn't a one-page plain language summary of a lot of findings, for example, and then they want us to say, well, that was a great project, or we'll help you disseminate it, or you want to develop a patient leaflet from something. And it's like, well, you know, it would be great if you asked us what we wanted a patient leaflet on in the beginning. And there are obstacles with working with patients too, and we fully acknowledge that. I mean, you know, keeping patients engaged throughout the process is a real challenge. Recruiting patients is a real challenge. It's a challenge for us sometimes in some areas to really get patients that are interested, that are activated, that actually want to participate. So, I mean, we feel it on both sides. So I'm not saying it's easy and it's, just contact us and we'll make it all happen. That's not the case, but it's obviously really come a long way
But
from
if
where
there
we were.
were researchers out there and they think, well, I might have done what you said we shouldn't, what were they supposed to, would they contact like an organisation like the Pain Alliance Europe and be advised by you?
Indeed. So I'm thinking of doing some research. At that point, I haven't even got a research question. Even better, come to us, talk to us. We can facilitate focus groups. We can have webinars. We can put you in direct contact with patients that will tell you exactly what it is that they need or feel or see that's missing in different areas or in different ways, because some will have more areas of interest than others, obviously. So, and then depending on the project, obviously we can reach out to our membership then at the national level if they want specific patients for a call or something like that. We can facilitate the connection there as well. And through our network, as I say, they may not be a member of ours, but we may know of somebody at least. And for from the other side, from the research and the clinicians, they don't always know where to get that information. So even at that point, we can be helpful in that way.
And so Patient Alliance Europe sort of limited geographically. Is there Patient Alliance Asia? Do you have like sister organisations? There's a global facet to IASP, for example, for pain patients, and that takes different regions. But there isn't, for example, a PAE of Asia or of other geographical regions. So no, actually, there isn't. We wouldn't have direct sisters companies, but when we look at population, some of those countries there will be equal anyway, so it's a challenge, but no, is the easy answer. Yeah, and I guess the follow-up question would be, should there be?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
But what does it take? I mean, again, one thing that I was pondering about is how do you get funded? I mean, I don't know how much money, but it does take money to run an organisation, no matter how smooth it runs and how narrow it is, but it does take money. How do you finance the work you're doing?
So we take a membership, first of all, so a nominal membership in terms of the structure and the involvement that the individual patient groups want to have with ourselves. And then also we're industry funded too, and then we receive, if we're, co-partners in research, we receive obviously the funding through EU funds or whatever like that, which is a relatively new process for us. We haven't received that much yet. But yeah, so mainly industry it will be at the moment, yeah.
Well, if you were looking towards the near future, like 5 years out, what do you think would be the perfect thing? What would be, ideally for you, what would happen? What would your position be? Would you be different from where you are? Would you be stronger at certain points? Would you be global? What would be your ideal growth?
I think the charm of being the European organisation is that it can still reflect the cultural differences and the individual needs, and considering within one country there can be so many different health systems, never mind within all of Europe, that I think the sensitivity to that is so important, especially in terms of policy. So it depends what we would want to achieve. As to 5 years, could we have other umbrella groups for all regions of the entire world? Absolutely. I don't think there will be enough patient organisations to sustain that as it is at the moment. Back to the funding question, to run these organisations takes considerable amount of time with little opportunity for funding. For EU funding, for example, you need to have a repository of a certain sum that can't have been sourced from industry to then be eligible for EU maintenance funding, let's say, core funding. And we would never meet that threshold, the amount of money that they would need. It wouldn't be possible for us, for the amount of pain patients that exist and those organisations, of how we would ever generate that money. So how you would do that in different regions of the world, it sounds great, but also to what end?
What if there was like a magic bullet or magic stroke of some sort, magic mushroom, so all the barriers disappeared? What would you like to see in 5 years? Where ideally, what would you like your organisation to do, be, contribute to in 5 years' time? if funding was not an issue and all of that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I know it's easier always to see the obstacles sometimes, but no, we really just like to see the growth of the relationship as it stands so well now between ourselves and EFIC, for example, within a global context, of course, that we have a place there too, but that there's really strong public and patient involvement in research, that's well funded, that patients are included and equal partners in that there's genuine patient education, that it isn't an afterthought of we will train the clinicians, but then also, okay, well, we need some psychoeducation for all the patients. But actual programs that do that on a European-wide basis, not just in one particular clinic in one country, but that will be standardized, and that patients would have, autonomy within that, but also control of that education process, and that would only enhance, or maybe even be part of, the education, like you mentioned earlier, for example, in the EFIC Academy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this is too difficult a question, but what, or maybe it's too simple, I don't know, but I'll put it out there. So if anyone's thinking, what is it really that a person with pain in an organization like yours contributes with? So imagine two products, whatever, two research products, two treatment modalities with and without patient involvement.
Yeah.
I assume you would say patient involvement is better, I would agree, but why do you think that is?
Because you use the example of a product, and if we were in any other industry, you would not bring anything to market without market research, without involving the customer, without testing with the customer, getting feedback from the customer, testing price points for the customer, and then seeing if they actually buy it in the end. And patients shouldn't be any different. We're customers of a system like anybody else. So that's exactly why.
I like that a lot. So in fact, it's not because we need it, it's because we did it wrong all along.
No, I wouldn't say that. And I think the disconnect is that everyone is working on the same things. I hear it every single day to hear the tremendous amount of work that goes into changing the lives of patients for the better, no matter what field people are in. And that message is being lost, actually. It gets forgotten by the patients too. We forget when we're sitting in an appointment and I have to wait how many hours. We get distracted with all of that. But ultimately, we are all trying to make the lives of pain patients better. And for 5 years' time, prevention of pain, that there are less pain patients, that there are pain pathways that are easily accessible to people in all countries. That's where we're leading towards. So there's a lot of good happening as well. It's not about we did it right, we did it wrong. The fact is we're moving towards better.
Fantastic way to end it. Deirdre, thank you so much for joining us, and the best of luck with all